Hey everybody, Blair Nightingale here. Market Monday, we're at it again. I told you I'd be back. I never lie. I'm always here. Same time on Monday evenings. You can join us right here, Facebook, YouTube. We have something special for you tonight for sure. We are going to have Mr. Ben Mitchell. For those of you who don't know Ben, this is one of David Mitchell, our founder and CEO of Tradeway. It's one of his sons, and actually he runs up a very unique division of what we do here at Tradeway. Hopefully, many of you out there got to join us last week. We were, of course, here for Market Monday and our Stock Talk Thursday broadcast. We also had our 5-day challenge. We got a chance to hear from a lot of different people around the Tradeway staff, the coaching community specifically, and they came on to share some stories on that 5-day journey. It was a fantastic journey, but you know what? We never got to hear from Ben Mitchell. Now, Ben is here today because he's got something, like I said, very specific that he wants to talk to you about, and I'm excited for that too. We have not had an opportunity to go over this in any capacity. I do remember a few questions that have come through over the year we've been doing this show, but I have not had any specific episodes where we've gone into what Ben is going to talk about. And I am going to actually leave it to Ben to introduce the topic for us. But I want to tell you, this is something that we expose all Tradeway students to, because here at Tradeway, we are ultimately trying to equip you guys to feel confident about your financial future. And there are different facets to that. So I'll tell you, most of the time we spend on this channel is on short-term trading, right? We've talked about that. You always see me hold up the two fists, right? There's the short-term trading and there's the long-term investing. We don't spend as much time on the long-term investing, but Tradeway actually does have a long-term investing program as well. It's a part of a healthy financial ecosystem. But there's another layer. There's another step here that we've not gone over. And there are multiple major reasons why I think this is something you're going to want to hear. Of course, you can see it in the title, but I want Ben to be able to give us a little bit more information. So first, I'm going to go ahead and pull Mr. Ben Mitchell right into the square. Ben, how you doing, man?
Buddy, I am doing great, Blair. Thanks so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while. Always love getting an opportunity to, this is only the second time I've ever been on a Facebook Live with you, but it was such a blast that I've been just anxiously waiting for the next time around. Thankfully, that's tonight. So
I know in the background, I know that there's something you've actually been working pretty hard on in the meantime.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to get to talk about tonight, so everybody's going to get the first peek at that for sure. So first, I just want to say, if you're on today, you will see there is a comment section, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're joining us from. Jeffrey's comment is right there. He always says it. He's always there. I love it. Jeffrey, howdy, 43 Fahrenheit and windy here in Colorado Springs. It looks like we just lost Ben for a second there, but he'll be right back. So I want to let you guys know, as we're going through, Ben is going to deep dive into this topic tonight. And I want to know if you guys have any questions. If you do, make sure you pop them over there in the comments. Let me know that you're here. If you're a newcomer, you've never been here, I'd love to hear from you. Go ahead, pop your name in the comments there. And of course, if you're returning, then I'm just as happy that you're back. We are expanding a lot of the programming that we're doing this year on our channels. You guys will see there's some advertisements for the podcast. If you guys aren't listening to the podcast, especially with what's coming up, I know some of the content that is coming up I actually don't know the exact release date. Ben can probably fill it in, but in the next season of episodes, season 2, there's going to be some guests on there that you guys don't want to miss. So just make sure you're also following the podcast. And that eventually, as I understand, that's also going to be posted right here on YouTube. Okay, I'm going to bring Ben back in here. We lost you for a second there, Ben.
That was weird. Sorry about that.
Technology, just how it goes. So let's dive right into it, man. Let's not keep the people waiting. I said you've been working on something for a little while now. And of course, as I mentioned, we've got it right there in the title. This is precious metals.
Right.
To start out, Ben, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what that means? What are we really talking about? Are we talking about just anything? Do certain kinds of currencies find their way in there? Maybe just define that for us, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, Blair. I mean, like you're kind of alluding to there, it could mean a lot of things. I mean, talking about precious metals, one of the largest markets in the world. You have gold and silver stocks, ETFs. You have mining stocks, companies that are directly related to the industry. You could go out there and trade or do investing in. Of course, you've got the physical side of things with coins and bars and gold and silver certificates. You got depositories out there. You can use your retirement funds to invest and store in. At Tradeway, we have for the past few years now, we've had a separate division specifically related to precious metals. Now, earlier you were mentioning we talk a lot about stock trading, obviously, a lot about short-term trading. Yeah. That's what a lot of these Facebook Lives are dedicated to. And so for some of you guys out there, you may not have even realized we had this other division. One of the reasons is because we do like for you guys to focus a lot on your short-term trading. But what's cool about it is when you are ready to take that next step, and a lot of you out there, I mean, I know from personal conversations I've had with so many of you, so many hundreds of our students across the country, people just seem to have this this almost intuitive, feeling of like, it seems to make sense to incorporate some metal somewhere down the road. They just might not know when, they might not know how, or even why they're having those feelings. It's kind of a funny thing. Right. It's a theme that I've experienced throughout the years. And so here's what we're talking about when Tradeway brings precious metals in the conversation. We are actually talking about physical, like gold and silver, coins, bars, rounds, you name it, like the kind of stuff you'd go to a coin shop to purchase so that you could get with a lot of larger dealers, online across the country. The reason, Blair, is because, I mean, we've got you guys covered when it comes to the potential, creating wealth. That's what the short-term trading is for. But what about when it comes down to protecting your money, whether that be money that you could potentially make trading or just your standard savings, maybe a portion of your paycheck every couple of weeks or once a month or something like that. Those kinds of things. What are some steps you could take to protect those funds, that money from, gradual inflation is one thing that literally affects every single human being on the planet.
Totally. Yeah.
Or maybe, something like a Great Recession that happened just about a decade ago. Even the pandemic brought some things to light that concern a lot of people. Not that we're talking about or like talking about scary things, creating fear here, Blair. The whole point about us talking about precious metals, bringing those to the table, is to actually totally remove fear from everything and create a sense of self-reliance for everybody. And so that's what we mean when we talk about precious metals. We talk about incorporating them in a way where you can actually protect your money, and in a way where you feel good and confident about that, rather than something crazy happening like a pandemic that comes out of nowhere and then thinking, well, gosh, now I need to go buy, some gold or silver before it's all bought up. And then all of a sudden the prices are too high, or maybe there's none left, whatever it may be. We want to help you guys avoid those kinds of feelings at all costs.
Okay. So that's really good. And I just want to say, Jeffrey and some others, I can see your comments in there. So we'll make sure to make some time. Please bring those questions. I'm not going to ignore them. I haven't missed them. We're just going to keep drilling down into this a little bit here, digging for the gold, if you will, Ben, and then we will get back and answer the questions. So you said a lot there, and I want to make sure.
Yeah, sorry.
No.
It's too easy on this topic.
I think it's great. I want to take some pieces there and make sure that folks at home understand some of the things that Ben's talking about in terms of how it's relevant to you. So, example, you mentioned this word inflation. We talked about this a little bit last week, actually, in our finance challenge, but maybe you could help, because I know I've seen some of your material. I know how shocking some of this can be, even when you begin to compare money from today to even not that long ago. Maybe help folks at home who have a little understanding, maybe they have no understanding on what that really is. You know, we hear that word and we get some kind of an idea, but maybe not really. And how is that affecting our money over time? How does precious metals help that? Give us a little bit of insight on that practically.
It's kind of crazy, Blair, because inflation is one of those things that's kind of just casually talked about these days. Like, you hear about inflation, you know, you can't even go read about a movie without it telling you how much it grossed at the box office, and then it always says adjusted for inflation. You know, this is where it lands on like the list of the top grossing movies of ever. We see the word inflation pretty often, so it becomes just kind of a casual thing that, you know, we don't really think anything about. Sometimes if we watch the news a little bit, we may hear about the Fed, you know, talking about 2% inflation a year, or that being their target, that sort of thing. Where it starts getting a little bit dangerous, and by dangerous, I just simply mean, you know, the health of our own personal savings and things like that. Those of us who do like to save, inflation is one of those things that always rewards the wealthy, and it always it's always a burden on those that like to save, those that like to set aside for the next generation, maybe, or whatever it may be. And so basically what happens, Blair, is, you know, our central bank, they do have these targets of like 2% inflation. Sometimes they hit it, sometimes they exceed it, sometimes they come under it. But the thing that we have to think about is that inflation is cumulative. And so, yeah, it may be 2% a year, but, you know, after, you know, a decade or so, and especially if they exceed their target, maybe that comes in at, you know, over 20%, that 20% less value that our money now has.
Right.
In fact,
Right.
I can tell you, using government figures, our money is in fact well over 20% less valuable. It has 20% less purchasing power than it did just a decade ago. So if you have just a standard savings account, which I'm one that does, and your money's just been sitting there safely over the past decade, you can now purchase 20% less stuff than you could have when you initially put it in the savings account a decade ago. That is how inflation can eat away at the value of your money over time. And you can extrapolate that. You can go back 5 years, you can go back a decade, back 20 years, and that number just keeps getting bigger.
So wait a second, Ben. Let me just clarify something. If I'm in a high interest savings account,
Right.
if I'm in I got a decent savings account with a bank, whatever the bank might be, and let's say I'm getting 0.08.
Right.
Maybe 1%.
Right.
I don't know if I could find that. Maybe. Okay. You're telling me that typically, at least if the economy's on target,
Right.
I'm still going to be behind in terms of purchasing power.
Inflation has outpaced interest for, I don't even know how long. We could go back at least a decade, maybe the last 2 decades. And I would be shocked to find a spot where interest in just a savings account was outpacing the inflation. So yes, you're right. Regardless of that, we're still losing our purchasing power just about every day, certainly every year.
Yeah. I should be clear. If you could get 1%, well, you'd be doing 1% better than you might be if it was a big fat zero.
Sure.
And yet at the same time, okay, so that's interesting. Okay. So part of what you're saying is there is a solution here, an alternative here for saving in the sense of a savings account where there seems to be vulnerabilities to inflation and losing our buying power. So how does precious metals come into play with that scenario in terms of protecting us?
Yes.
What are maybe some of the numbers there you've discovered?
Of course. So great question, Blair. So first of all, you used a word that is used pretty often throughout the industry, and that is an alternative. So some people talk about metals as being an alternative currency, like if the absolute worst happened and, you know, they need it for buying like day-to-day things, as if you'd use, just like you would with your pocket change now or something like that.
Yeah.
If you look at just history itself, it fits the bill for that. But, you know, obviously that's again a really drastic scenario. No one can predict the future. No one knows when something like that might happen. But what is happening every single day is the what you were talking about a second ago when it comes to these problems of inflation and things like that. That is a real active problem that we need to solve. And so, yes, to put it in perspective, use that word again, alternative, maybe like an alternative savings, like you mentioned. I will say this right off the bat. I personally, and same for all of Tradeway, we never advocate going and putting 100% of your savings account into gold or silver, because we understand that there is still a use for, for dollars, for fiat currencies, and there may be very valid reasons why we need a large chunk of our savings in, like a savings account or whatever it may be. But even if you took just a portion of it, maybe 5 to 10%, which is kind of around industry standards. I know some folks that literally have over 20% of all of their money in gold and silver. The reason why you may consider something like that, Blair, is because while, we may be losing, I don't know the exact number. I should have looked it up before this started, but let's just say 25% in the last decade. Okay. I think it's slightly under that, but let's say 25% of purchasing power that our dollars have lost in the last decade. In parallel, while that is happening, you look at gold and the way it's performed in the last decade. It has gained over 60% in the last decade. So let's just say you had a small portion of your savings from a decade ago in gold, rather than just cash or a savings account, however you want to put it. Rather than losing over 20% of your purchasing power, you would have that portion of your savings would have actually adjusted for inflation. So you wouldn't have lost any of the purchasing power. And in fact, you would have gained through price appreciation, because gold is in high demand, just like a lot of other commodities. But it's a peculiar commodity because it covers, it's like a crossover hit. If you know what I mean? It's like a crossover hit in the investment world. It covers a lot of bases that people enjoy. And so through price appreciation, you actually would have gained value by, again, a little over 60% in the last decade. So that is how it works, Blair. It's almost like having a savings account or a portion of your savings account that automatically adjusts for inflation and even increases in value a little bit beyond that. Actually, a lot of it.
So would you say, is this a strategy that a lot of the wealthy use to protect themselves from inflation?
A lot of the wealthy do. Now, you'll hear folks like, there's a famous quote, Warren Buffett, that talks about him not having a lot of interest in gold because it doesn't have any yield. And he is right about that. Gold does not have any yield because it's money. It's not really an investment. We throw the word investment out because it's just what's commonly perceived to be what's true about gold and silver. Gold and silver are not actually investments, because investment, the term investment implies that it is a risk asset that can provide either yield in some way or growth in some way. Gold and silver actually, they don't have that because they are just money. Just like if you took a single dollar bill and you put it in a sock drawer 10 years later, that dollar bill hasn't gained any yield. It's still a single dollar bill. Same is true if you take a single gold coin and you put it in your sock drawer 10 years later, it's just a single gold coin. Now, what's interesting about it is because gold and silver are tied in value to the US dollar, just because that's the way it's traded right now.
Okay.
When the dollar gains or loses value, it affects the price of gold and silver. So that is why we've seen gold go up pretty much exponentially since the 70s, is because since the 70s, our dollar has been losing value exponentially.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so I hope everybody out there is kind of catching this, what we're really learning here. And Ben, I'll speak for myself. I've seen the late night infomercials.
Right.
I've seen the Fox News spots on, now is the time, you got to get this, you got to do. And it's sort of like we don't really know who these people are. We don't really know, is this legit? Is this good? So we're getting some practicals here on, okay, this is a legitimate use that people who are looking to manage their money well. Remember, I said at the beginning, everybody, we've got kind of some different categories here, as Ben just talked about. Investment, we call it that. It's a little bit different. We've got our short term, we've got our longer term. I've heard precious metals almost called hyper long term.
Yes.
But you can see there's a protective aspect to what Ben is talking about here. So it's a little bit different mindset even still. We talk long-term, short-term, but here we are in a third category. Very, very good stuff, Ben, because I think a lot of people, I was blown away when I think it was a comparison to 2000, or maybe it was 2001.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How much buying power has been lost, the change. And at that time, I would say it was probably 2018 when I first saw that, maybe.
Yes.
But it's tremendous. It's tremendous. If you had a bunch of cash just packed in an account, or stuck in the wall in your house or under the mattress or whatever, I understand most people probably don't do that. I hope you don't. But if you did, yeah, it's actually pretty financially devastating in some ways in terms of what you could have done and what you end up having. So pretty amazing. Okay, so you touched on something else now. You mentioned a phrase I'm gonna call you out on, because I know a lot of us, including myself, till I learned from you, to be honest, I had no idea what it meant. So you said fiat currency, okay?
Sure.
I think it's kind of important. Just tell me a little bit, and I understand, and I'll say this for everybody out there, I understand Ben's heart. We don't talk about extreme situations for the purpose of saying, who knows, things could be really terrible tomorrow, so you got to get some precious metals in your portfolio. However, I do want Ben to talk a little bit, because I know you studied this, Ben. Tell us a little bit about, first of all, what did you mean by fiat currency? And as we open the door to a conversation about currency in a different way, tell me a little bit about, is our money system safe? Is it solid? Is there some things we should be aware of? Maybe not afraid, but we need some wisdom. I think you could shed some light on that for us.
Yeah, it's such a huge topic, Blair, because again, we certainly don't ever want to take an angle of, trying to induce fear in any way. And you mentioned the late night infomercials about coins and bars.
Yeah.
Very often in those commercials, or if you see any kind of precious metal dealer doing marketing, they generally use those fear-induced urgency type marketing ploys. They want to get you to go buy their product as soon as possible. So they'll use fear, like massive inflation coming, dollars about to collapse, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so it creates fear, so people go buy. We want to avoid that. Again, we don't even sell precious metals, Blair. We just teach you how to do it the right way. And so we don't have any bias. We're just like, guys, here's the information. Here's how you approach this, so that you can sit back and objectively analyze the situation without having any sort of anxiety about it. Now, to answer your question, fiat currency. So just the basic definition of fiat currency, Blair, is a currency that is not tied to any physical commodity. If you look a little bit deeper into it, you realize what it truly is it is a currency produced by a government that is not backed by anything but basically the faith in that government, or the faith of the currency itself. And so here's what's interesting about fiat currency is we've had fiat currencies around for hundreds of years of human history. And you can go back and you can study it, and you can see ways that it worked usually in a short time frame, and then ultimately didn't work. In some cases, more drastic than others.
Okay.
But here's the fascinating part about fiat currency to me today, and that is it wasn't until 1971 when President Nixon basically he closed the gold window, so to speak. You may be familiar with the term gold standard. The United States was on a gold standard from, I believe it was around 1879 until 1933. And then some interesting things took place where it wasn't a true gold standard anymore, but we were still kind of tied to gold. Our dollar was still anchored to gold in some way until 1971. And then President Nixon closed the gold window. And what that effectively caused, I'm trying to keep things as simple as possible because, again, there's a lot of detail in all this. But in 1971, when that happened, the entire world, for the first time in all of human history, was collectively put on this fiat money system. There hasn't been a single currency tied to any physical commodity, and gold is usually the best one, since 1971. That's only 50 years ago.
Right.
It took about 250 years for the Roman Empire to collapse as they slowly over time started debasing their money. They're taking the silver out and just putting worthless base metals in their coinage, but they were saying it was worth the same.
Right.
And so they were kind of,
as long as everybody perceived on some level it was the same value, then it was functioning.
They were leaving the face value on it, but they took the real stuff out. And what ultimately happened after a course of about 200 years is all of the neighboring civilizations started to realize that they stopped using the Roman currency, and it eventually their currency totally collapsed. So again, what's interesting to me is that just in the last 50 years, for the first time in human history, we weren't necessarily, debasing slowly over time and all this kind of stuff. We just all at once like that went on this fiat money system. 50 years isn't that long, guys. It's still a relatively new experiment because, as we've seen with cases like, what's ironically enough, Blair, we went through something called the Great Stagflation of the 1970s. That happened immediately after we closed the gold window.
Right.
But then, fast forward to the Great Recession 2008, fast forward to the pandemic of 2020, we can see some things that can happen pretty quickly that have massive impact on the financial markets. And again, the only thing that gives value to fiat currencies is the faith of the people that use it. So the question is, how much faith do you have in everyone else's faith? Depending on how you answer that question, that is how much you should be considering that alternative we were talking about. Maybe to protect a little portion, maybe 5%, or just having some kind of backup just in case. It's about self-preparedness. It's not about anything other than just preparing for any kind of scenario, which is a pretty biblical thing.
Yeah.
And being self-reliant.
That is another thing. Okay, so we've covered some ground with inflation. We're moving quickly here, but that's really important. That's affecting all of us. Move to the next gear. A fascinating explanation, Ben, on money. And I know because I've heard you go further into it. There's a lot that you can go into there. But an interesting thing for everybody at home to think about. Some of you guys knew this. Some of you didn't. Currency, our currency, in varying degrees over time, as Ben just described, had an actual asset backing its value. And it's radically changed over time. And even on the level of it's new, right? Doing that is just new. We're just not sure. In 2008, I'm going to reiterate as I say this, Ben, again, it's not about fear, but I don't necessarily want to go down a rabbit trail, but I'd love to tell everybody a story when I first moved to Texas and I met this individual, and I tell you what, he is ready for anything.
Right.
I mean, he's got everything in place. I'll leave the details out on this story, not because they're bad, but I just want to protect the individual. But the reason I'm telling you guys this is because, here's this individual, which I thought was kind of quirky, amazing, but kind of quirky that, wow, you're really prepared here, over the last 12 months, I find a lot of people are saying, well, geez, a lot of things have happened that have never happened to us before, or haven't happened in a long time, or haven't happened in America, or they haven't happened this way. You get my point, right? There are just things that just happen. We were told in 2008 that the housing market could never crash like that. That just doesn't happen. You can't do that. Can't, won't, shouldn't, never. It doesn't always hold up. And we don't necessarily know. And having wisdom as opposed to fear is our goal. And I think there's really some wisdom in what you're saying here. I want to jump over real quick here, Ben.
Sure.
Tom is saying, Ben, your teaching has been our family's blessing. Learned a lot. Thank you. So that's
Thank you for that, Tom.
I like this. Linda Common said, I just added purchased precious metals to my 150 list. If you want to challenge last week, you know what she means by the 150 list. Don't miss the next challenge. If you weren't in there, if you were, get that list done. Let's see. We've got a couple of things. Yes, Jeffrey says, before last year, I had never seen bare shelves at the grocery store.
Yeah, that was definitely an eye-opener, isn't it? I mean, that's not necessarily directly related to the precious metals topic, but in a sense, I shouldn't even say that because it actually, I could. Okay, well, that opened up the can of worms. Now I got to go there.
Ben's like, I don't know if I want to go there, but yeah.
Well, it just brought a thought. It just brought a thought, Jeffrey, with that. And you're right. It is a very ominous feeling walking in a grocery store, and it's happened to me or to us in this area twice in less than a year, because it happened the first time, the beginning of the pandemic, when all the toilet paper was gone, but even a lot of what are they called, Blair? Like non-perishables or whatever, like canned goods.
Sure. Yeah.
Stuff you can store for a long time. It was gone. Like you said, bare shelves. And then it just happened to us again, Jeffrey. I know it didn't happen to a lot of you guys up north because y'all are actually used to winter, but we just had some crazy weather in Texas that shut everything down. And the stores were even more bare than they were at the beginning of the pandemic. It's a very strange feeling walking to a grocery store and experiencing that, Jeffrey. But here's why it is somewhat related to precious metals. Guys, the same thing happened throughout the precious metals industry in both cases. At the beginning of the pandemic, and then recently that whole spike in silver, Blair, that's a totally different topic, but a lot of you guys are familiar with that. That's kind of related to the whole GameStop scenario. When that happened, once again, the shelves, the proverbial shelves for these online dealers were wiped clean, nothing left. And so again, if you're out there just thinking, one of these days I'm going to grab some gold or silver. Well, if something like that happens, I'll tell you this. If you had been thinking, I want to get into some silver, and I will eventually. If you were thinking that, and then you didn't invest in some silver before that spike in silver happened, it's going to be a long time before you have the same opportunities that you did price-wise before the spike happened. Because not only did the spike occur and send the price of silver to multi-year highs, but it also increased something called the premium, which is something you have to pay when you go buy these coins. And even though it's been over a month or a full month at this point, today's March 1st, it's been exactly a month since the spike in silver, premiums are still through the roof because demand shot up so high and supply went so fast that dealers had to raise their premiums. So Jeffrey, I like your comment because it's just one more reminder, anything can happen. So why not prepare when we have these opportunities?
Right. And if we prepare, then we don't need to react. And I was thinking as you're talking, Ben, a friend of mine used to say of course I don't mean literal war here, but the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. It's a kind of an intense statement.
Sure.
But it simply is just a principle that is saying, in the times where we have the ability for readiness, those are the times to ready. You know what I mean? Because when things do happen or change, those are the times we want to draw on the readiness that we already have in place. We can't always do that. But when we can, there's no reason why we shouldn't consider that. So I'm going to jump into some more questions here.
Yeah.
Jeffrey says, does gold look like a better buy than silver at the moment? I know that you help people as they're looking at both of those.
Yeah.
What would you say to that, Ben?
It's a big question, Jeffrey. And I will say this. I know you're a Trader Max member. I believe it's Trader Max that you are, Jeffrey. And so you hopefully you saw the gold market alert that we sent today. It's a big question because gold and silver, there's just such a wide margin in their prices. So, gold around 1775 at the moment, or maybe a little bit below that now, 1750. Silver around 26 per ounce is what those price points represent. And so it really depends on budget. So I'm going to give you just two quick illustrations that will hopefully answer that. First one is when I was 18 years old and I had just gotten married right out of high school and did not have much of a budget, but I had a budget. It wasn't a very large budget that I could just spare on going out and buying some 1 ounce gold coins. I mean, is beneficial as that might have been, I just simply didn't have the funds for it. As at that point in life. So my budget didn't fit investing in gold. It did for silver. And so I put a high emphasis on silver for a number of years after I initially got married. Gold wasn't even really wasn't really an option at that time. Even if gold had been at a great buy point, I was still having to focus on silver more simply because of that huge price gap. Silver was more affordable. I could do it. Now, a few years later, when I could start thinking about gold, then for those of you out there who are in a place where you can, financially consider gold or silver, and maybe you even know, I definitely want some gold at some point. Right now is actually a fantastic time for gold, fantastic buy points for gold, because if we had a chart, I actually don't have a chart pulled up, Blair, but the spot price of gold right now, it's downtrending. Just you can chart gold and silver just like you can the S&P or any other stock. It's actually in a downtrending pattern. It's at support and premiums that, again, I mentioned that word a second ago. That is the price that you pay above the spot price for a coin, like a gold coin. They're around 6 or 7%. That's not too bad. So, Jeffrey, to answer your question, gold is at a fantastic buy point. If you are already planning on incorporating gold into your portfolio, into your budget in some way, it's at a fantastic buy point. Silver isn't too bad, but it is still recovering from that silver spike a month ago now, and premiums are still at 30%. Not ideal.
Tom had a question if you could give an average premium on a silver coin. So there you go.
Pre-silver spike, Tom, I would say about 15 to 20%. But overnight, when that silver spike occurred, premiums on, let's just say, a silver eagle, that's a pretty popular coin. A lot of people are familiar with that one. They almost double. It almost doubled. It went from 19% to almost 40 overnight. So one night you were paying 19% premiums for it. The next night or the next morning, because of that silver spike, you're then paying 40%, which is almost half the coin's value.
Totally. Yeah.
You are certainly not getting more money, more metal for your dollar.
That's really, really good. So we're helping everybody out there. If you're going to go out and you're going to buy, you're looking at this, you've been thinking about this, or you're hearing what Ben's saying and you're going, I want to look at that. I want to look into this. That's an important thing to know. I wouldn't have known that.
Sure.
Before Ben taught me any of this, as I mentioned previously, I could go out, buy it. I guess maybe that premium is normal. Okay. Mm-hmm. And off you go. And then you realize, oops, this is definitely not as good a spot as it could have been. So that's really, really helpful information. Okay. Now, Ben, we're probably getting to the end of our time here, getting pretty close. Yeah. I want to hit something else first before we do that. Talked about how Tradeway doesn't actually sell metals. So specifically, what is it that you do that for people out there that are interested, and I think everybody should take an interest in educating yourself in this area. It can't hurt you. It can only help you to know more. In fact, we love to say, as we quote the scriptures around here, that knowledge is better than gold. Yeah. So equip yourself with the knowledge. What do people who are in that spot, they're interested in knowing more about this, but we don't actually sell metals. So what is it that you do for folks out there? And if people are interested in metals, how do you help them do that with wisdom?
Exactly, Blair. We don't sell metals, but we do provide one of the, if not the most comprehensive metals education in the entire metals industry. To my knowledge, there's no other company in the world that provides a precious metals education that's as comprehensive as ours. And I'm not just saying that to make it sound awesome. It's true. And listen, guys, the reason why it's important to approach metals investing starting with an education is going out and buying some coins sounds pretty simple. But what you don't realize is that the industry, the precious metals industry, is considered the Wild West of the financial sector. And the reason why is it is not regulated hardly at all, very, very minor regulations. So that allows a lot of sellers out there to take advantage of people in order to get the most bang for their buck. They get the highest premiums, the highest commissions that they can get. The education helps you guys wade those waters. We help you guys know the way prices should look. Eric, this is a pretty simple way to do it. We teach you guys why to buy precious metals in the first place,
Right.
Why even consider it? How to do it the right way so that you know how pricing works, so that you know that you are getting the most metal for your dollar. Then we show you guys when to invest in metals, because that's another thing. We want to avoid fear, right? So we're going to teach you guys 3 Mitchell family strategies to avoiding fear, avoiding the wrong times to be buying metals, so that once again, you're getting the most metal for your dollar. So there's the why, how, and when. And then we end by teaching you guys where, because there are a lot of options out there to get metals from. Some of them, again, you may you'd be paying more than you should. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So we want to help you guys avoid that as well. That is what our education covers. And lucky for you guys, we're actually doing a live precious metals 2-day virtual event coming up in less than 2 weeks, Blair.
Nice. Excellent. Excellent. What are the dates specifically on that, Ben? So everybody
that is going to be March 12th and 13th, that Friday and Saturday. And if you guys are familiar at all with just kind of the way Tradeway does things, we do a lot of 2-day events. We do like our foundational stock trading event is 2 days. We have option trading 2 days. So this is going to be a 2-day precious metals live event. And get this, Blair, it's the first time in over 4 years that I've taught this course in its entirety live. I can't wait. I cannot wait for it. I'm just
this is precious metals 2.0, maybe 3.0 at this point.
Yes.
The world has not seen this course yet. I have not seen this course, everybody. I haven't sat through this.
Right.
I'll just tell you guys out there, maybe somebody can relate. For me, I'm so interested in gaining wisdom from the perspective of history and
There's
being
a lot of
able
history.
to say, well, how does that help me today practically? What I've seen of Ben's course in the past, and some of you have seen it, even just that, which is not the totality of the course for sure, but even just that I thought was fascinating. That piece I know will at least be in some way in the
It'll
new.
be there. Well, you saw about 4 years ago, Blair. And by the way, guys, if you have watched the online precious metals course before, that's what Blair's talking about. He was in attendance that day.
Exactly.
That was about half of what I'm going to be teaching live in a couple of weeks. 2-day event. The whole first day, Blair mentioned history. The whole first day, most of the first day, I should say, is setting a foundation based on history and how that history is how we can actually apply that actively to our personal goals now.
Yes.
I cannot wait for it, Blair. I'm too excited.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm going to, for everybody out there, you say, how do I do this? How do I make sure I'm in the class? Ben, what does everybody got to do?
So let me see here. I have a link, Blair. I'd love to share with everyone. I'm not seeing a place I can put that in the chat, though.
I can pop that in the chat here. I was going to say I'm going to do that. But is it going to be on the website as well?
It is. It's on our event site. Absolutely. You can go to our website. If Blair gets that link in there, it'll be there. And you guys can go there. You can actually learn about it. I have a video in there just promoting it and telling you a little bit more about it. You get all the details just by clicking the link. And then, get registered for it, guys. That's how you do it. You can go to our website, or if you're able to feed that link, Blair, you can do that as well. But that's how you do it.
I'm pulling it up right here.
That is awesome. And I saw a question from Tom there. Tom, you mentioned Insider Plus. Yeah, it includes our online precious metals course. And even with that, Tom, this live virtual event, it's going to be covering even more than that had to offer. That's only about half of the full course I put together about 5 years ago or more. And so, again, I'm teaching it in its entirety for the first time in a long time. And it's going to have a lot of new information that no one's ever heard before.
Hey, Ben, thanks so much for being on tonight, man. I know that is just that's a dip of the toe in the water, for sure, when it comes to this topic. But I think you did a great job tonight of helping everybody, including myself, understand. Ben is a Troy.
Yes.
Very nice, Troy.
Love it, Troy.
Helping everybody understand just some practicals here. We're talking about protecting your money. We're talking about having wisdom here. We're talking about a comprehensive strategy for your money that Ben has experience. Certainly the Mitchell family has experience. He said 3 specific strategies that they have for wisdom when you're getting involved in this area: what to do, when to do, who to do it with, which by the way also means when you know the yes, you also know a lot of no's, and in an industry where things can get a little sideways.
Absolutely.
That's some good information to have. So I've put the link, Tradeway, both at the YouTube and the Facebook. It's on there. Of course, you can also go directly to Tradeway.com. You'll go into the events page. You can find it there. But again, it is in the comments right now for you. If you are joining us on recording, you'll see it there, or head on over to Tradeway.com. Ben, thank you so much for being on tonight, my friend. It's a pleasure to have you, as always, and I'm looking forward to the course.
Yes, sir. It has been an absolute blast to be with you guys. I know we talked about a lot, Blair, and again, so much detail. Never enough time. So if I talked about anything or said something too quickly that just didn't make a lot of sense, guys, feel free to shoot me an email. You can email me directly at preciousmetals@tradeway.com or give our office a call, and I'm always more than happy to get your questions answered. And I really hope to see you guys at that live virtual event here in just a little under a couple of weeks. I'm really excited about it. So hope to see you guys there.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Well, thanks everybody for being on tonight. Appreciate you guys giving us your time as always. We're on here with some different programs every day of the week. We're going to have a Trading Tip Tuesday, a Word Wednesday with Jeffrey Nance. I'll be back for Stock Talk Thursday, hot or not. So we'll see you guys then. Thanks, Ben. Have yourself a good night, everybody out there.
You guys.
Safe, and we'll see you next time.